Hi all. Today we are going to learn about the binding of referencing environment and the concepts like deep binding and shallow binding. A referencing environment is the complete set of bindings in effect at a particular point in a program. There are static scope rules and dynamic scope rules. If a programming language follows static scope rules, then the referencing environment is dependent on the lexical nesting of program blocks. Whereas if the programming language follows dynamic scope rules, then the referencing environment is dependent on the order in which the declarations are reached. If we pass a function as an argument to another function, then there arises an issue in the referencing environment. Whether we have to use the referencing environment in effect when the subroutine is passed as a parameter or when the subroutine is actually called. If the referencing environment is the one in effect when the subroutine is passed as parameter, then we will call it as deep binding. If it is the one in effect when the subroutine is actually called, then we will call it as shallow binding. So in simple terms, deep binding takes the environment of the parent function, whereas shallow binding takes the environment of the final calling function. I have put this final word in double quotes. I will explain it with the example. Consider the given Pascal code. In this Pascal program, first we are declaring two global variables. X is of type integer and we are initializing it with the value 3. Y is of type integer and we are initializing it with the value 4. And procedure is a keyword used in Pascal to represent it is a function. So procedure add is the name of the function, and inside that function definition we are declaring x equal to x plus y. There is another procedure second which will take a function as the argument. That is why we return it as a procedure. Procedure means function in Pascal. Then inside that second procedure we are writing x as integer and we are initializing it with the value 5. And we are calling the function which is passed as the argument. So p is passed as argument. Next is we are defining another function procedure first. Inside that particular function we are initializing y as integer type with the value 6 and we are calling the procedure second of add. That is a function add is passed as an argument to another function. So here there arises the case of dynamic scoping and static scoping, or the concept of deep binding and shallow binding. Then we are calling the first function and we are printing the value. Right integer of x means we are printing the value of integer variable x. The program execution begins from the first line, which are two global variable declarations. So the global variables are stored in the memory. X as 3 and y is equal to 4. So its scope will be during the entire lifetime of the execution of this particular program. Then we are seeing a procedure add, which is a function definition, so it will be skipped. Then procedure second, which is taking as argument, so it is also skipped as it is a function definition. Next is procedure first, which is a function definition. Next is a function call. So the program execution begins from line 11, that is the first function is called first. So the control is transferred to the procedure first. Here we are declaring y as 6 and we are calling second of add, that is a function is passed as an argument to the subroutine. So second of add is called. In second we are receiving the function as add. P is replaced with the function name add and we are representing x equal to 5. So x is redefined as 5 and we are calling the function which is received as the argument. The function which is received as argument is add. So the add function is called when we will call the function p inside the procedure second. So here we are calling a function inside a subroutine. A function is passed as an argument. So here arises the need of dynamic scoping and static scoping, that is the concept of deep binding and shallow binding. And inside the procedure add we have to update the value of x as x plus y. So what value of x and y should be considered while computing the value of x? That is the question. In shallow binding it will take the environment of the final calling function. So this add function is called by second, so it will take the referencing environment of the second procedure. So the value of x in second is 5. So the value of x will be taken as 5 and there is no y value, so it will move downwards in the stack. So in the downward, the next adjacent activation record is of first, which is calling the function second. So inside the first there is a value of y which is 6. So that 6 value is considered by using the concept of closest nested subroutine rule. So the value of x will be updated as 5 plus 6, which is equal to 11 in shallow binding. In case of deep binding or static scoping, it will take the environment of the parent function. Here the parent function is first. So in first there is no declaration for x. So it will take the global value of x. The global value of x equal to 3. And there is a redefinition of y in the function first. So the y value will be taken as 6. 6 plus 3, which is equal to 9. For example, if we have a local redeclaration of x equal to 1 here, then in deep binding the value will be 1 plus 6, which is equal to 7. So the concept is, in deep binding we will take the environment of the parent function. Here the parent function is first, because the first is the first function executed. From the first we are calling all the other subroutine calls. So it will take the environment of the parent function. Though there is no x value here, it will take the value of x which is declared as global variable. Though there is y value in the first itself, there is no need to consider the global value of y. That is why in deep binding the value is 3 plus 6, where 3 is the global value of x and 6 is the redefined value of y in the function first. Consider the Python code given below. Def is used to represent a function or a definition in Python. So def sub1, inside sub1 we are initializing the value of x as 1, and we are defining three functions named sub2, sub3 and sub4, and we are calling the function sub3 inside the definition of sub1. So the program execution will begin from definition of sub1, because the question is, if sub1 is called first, predict the value in shallow and deep binding. So the sub1 function is called first. There is no global variables. So inside sub1 we are declaring x as 1. So inside the sub1 stack frame or the activation record, we have initialized the value of x as 1. And these three are function definitions. So these three set are skipped. So the first function called is sub3. So sub3 is called. So the control is given to sub3, where x is initialized as 3. X is redefined as 3. And we are passing a function as an argument to the subroutine, sub4 of sub2. Here sub2 is a function, sub4 is a function. A function is passed as an argument. So here arises the concept of shallow binding and deep binding. So sub4 is called. Sub4 will receive a function as argument. So the f will get the function name sub2, x equal to 4. So sub4 activation record initializes x as 4, and the function f is called. F means sub2. So sub2 is called. Inside sub2 we are printing the value of x. So what value of x will be displayed if it follows shallow binding and deep binding? As we all know that shallow binding takes the environment of the final calling function. Sub2 is called by sub4, so it will take the environment of sub4. So x will be printed as 4. In case of deep binding, it takes the environment of the parent function. Here the parent function is sub1, because in the question itself it is told that sub1 is called first. Inside sub1 we are calling all the other subroutines. So the parent function is sub1. So the value of x in the parent function sub1 is 1. So if we are following deep binding, then the x value printed will be as 1. So this is the concept of deep binding and shallow binding. In shallow binding, we will take the environment of the final calling function. If there is no value in that particular environment, it will move downwards to the stack and find the necessary value. In case of deep binding, it will take the environment of the parent function where the subroutine is called. Thank you.